Hi everyone, this is Maureen Wong for YourNextStamp.com. Today we're going to be making this card. I believe I've made up the card fold. I've looked around on the internet and haven't seen anybody else doing it, and I've done it a couple times before, and I'm calling it a center platform card. And it's just like a center step card, except instead of having steps in the center, it has a flat platform. And it also has a gap in the middle where you can insert images and they'll stick up. And then you just push up on the bottom and it folds flat for mailing. And part one is going to be the making of the actual card base, and part two is going to be finishing the card and doing all the decorations. So let's get started. Okay, to start off, we're going to be making the base of the card, and this is a piece of 8.5 by 11 white cardstock from Paper Tray Ink. Cut in half at 5.5 inches, so it's 5.5 by 8.5. And I'm using this because it's a nice heavy weight, and the way that I'm constructing my card, I want it to be able to hold up the things that I'm sticking to the sides. So I want to make sure I use something that's a little heavier weight. I'm definitely not going to be using my Georgia Pacific because that is way too light and would just fall over if I attach stuff the way I've attached it to this card. So I'm taking this, and you might be wondering why I have my MISTI out, and it turns out that the MISTI is a really handy tool for helping you measure and draw straight lines, because the squared off base helps to align your card. And then I'm also using two of my bumper grid templates, the 1 inch, and I made a special one, 1 1/4 inch, just for this card. And I'm getting a pencil, and remember that when you're making the marks on the card, you're going to be doing this on the back side because you don't want them to show on the front when you're folding up your card. So first I'm going to take my 1 inch template, and I have my MISTI turned to the side here because it's easier to get the whole thing in the camera shot, and I don't need to show you the cover because I'm not going to be using the cover. So the first thing I need to tell you actually is, if you'll watch carefully, this moves. I'm moving it left to right, and there's just a little bit of area that is in excess of the length of the cardstock. So the cardstock moves, so if I'm going to be measuring off the edge of the MISTI, I'm going to make sure that my cardstock is pushed up to the edge that I'm measuring from. If I measure 1 inch from this side, it'll be a perfect 1 inch with my template. But you see there's this tiny little gap on this side, and if I put my 1 inch template, I'm going to be just a little short on that side. So what I want to do is push my cardstock all the way up to that side, and then I'm going to use my pencil and draw my line. And then on this side, I'm going to do the same thing and shove the cardstock into this side of the MISTI, put down my 1 inch bumper, and draw my line. And I'm sorry if you can't see this really well. I don't want to use a pen because at one point when I fold up the card, it'll actually show from the back. So I don't want to do it too dark or in pen or anything like that. So hopefully you can see the lines. And of course I'll have the sheet with all of the measurements on it on the blog post for this card. And it has two different measurement sets. And the one measurement set is when I'm using the MISTI, and I'll show you how I'm using that. The other side is if you're not using the MISTI, usually you like to measure things just from one side. So the measurements are going to be, the cut lines are 1 1/4 inches from the sides, and actually that one you have to do from each side. It's easier that way. But for all the fold lines, you're going to do it at 1 inch, 2 1/4 inches, 4 1/4 inches, 6 1/4 inches, and 7 1/2 inches. And you don't have to remember that because, like I said, this paper will be on the blog post. But let me do it according to how I'm doing it with the MISTI, which is measuring from each side and measuring from previously drawn lines. So we already have our 1-inch lines on each side. Now I'm going to take my 1 1/4 inch bumper and I'm going to line up that edge with the 1-inch line that I drew, and I'm going to draw another line. And actually what I need to do also is I need to draw the cut lines. So the cut lines are also 1 1/4 inch from the edges. So I'm going to draw those in, and they just go up to the 1-inch lines. And then I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing on the other side. From the 1-inch line, I'm going to draw this 1 1/4 and draw it all the way up to the 1-inch line. So these two lines here are going to be my cut lines, and then everything going this way is going to be a score line. And I need to do my 1 1/4 from this side. So again, I'm going to line up my 1 1/4 inch template with the line that I drew for the 1-inch, and then I'm going to draw in a line between the cut lines for my score line. And there actually is one more score line that is right down the center through the whole thing. These score lines you only score between the cut lines, but I'm going to do one score line that goes across the entire length or width of the card, and that is at 4 1/4 inches to fold it in half. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. I've got my little mini scoreboard, and I'm going to score at 4 1/4. And the reason why I do this one first is just because it's easier to just go straight across before I cut the cut lines. So now I'm going to put away my MISTI because I'm done with all of my measuring. And I'm going to take out my trimmer. And I just got this. It's the Fisker Shortcut trimmer, and I got it partially for doing cards like this, step cards, where you need to cut a certain area and you're not cutting all the way in from the edges. It's much easier using one of these type with this tiny little blade than trying to do it on my Genesis trimmer, which has the big round cutting blade, because you can never get it exactly. Well, you can, but I have a hard time getting it exactly on that line. So with the Fisker Shortcut trimmer, you have the wire guide, so you line that up exactly with your cut line, and then I'm gonna lift up the track a little bit so I can bring my blade in here and start cutting where it's supposed to be cut, just up to that 1-inch line. And then I'm going to go on the other side and again line up the wire with my drawn line. I'm going to lift up and bring it into that 1-inch mark and cut to the other 1-inch mark. And now I have my two cut lines, and that's all I need my trimmer for. And now I'm going to bring back my scoreboard, and I'm going to score all the score lines, which is, this is the 1-inch from the edge, and this is the 1 1/4 inch from the 1-inch side. And then I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing again, the 1-inch mark and the 1 1/4 from there. And that is my card base, all scored and cut. And like I said, you're going to be doing all the lines, drawing on the back, and then so I'm going to flip this over. This is the clean side, and these two sides are going to be mountain folds, which from the, if you don't know, from the side they look like little mountains. And then this one is going to be a mountain fold as well. And this one is going to be a mountain fold as well. And then the middle is going to be a valley fold. And so when you fold it up, you're going to get this kind of, it looks like a football goal. And actually I spoke too soon. There's one more cut that we need to make. And that is, so wait, this way. This part. When it closes up, it's going to be sticking out too far, and I only want it sticking out a certain amount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it so that it's 1 inch long. Wait, let me see. Let me just make sure. Yeah. So this is 2 inches from this score line. And so there's a 1 inch line on this side of the trimmer, and I'm gonna put the edge of that, let me get this more in frame, the edge of that at the 1 inch line, and then I'm gonna go ahead and cut through both those layers. Oh, and it didn't cut through exactly, so let's go again. There we go. And that is the final cut. And what we're going to do is now we're going to adhere this together, and I'm using my ATG gun. And what I'm going to do is put the adhesive on the very edge. I mean, not like super close to the edge, but near to this edge. This edge is where it's going to be meeting the other one. When it's folded together, you'll see that that makes the platform. But I want a little gap in the platform base so that I can stick my objects in with glue and it'll hold them in there. So I don't want to put my ATG adhesive all the way up to the fold, otherwise I won't be able to stick things into that that joint. So what we're going to do is just close this on itself, and it's going to stick those two bottom pieces together, and then you fold your platform back this way, and there you go. You have your platform. And if you see from the side, it has this little area, and this little area actually rests on the table like this. These two rest on the table. This one actually comes down and rests on the table and provides a flat surface here for your platform, so it gives it a little bit more support. It's not just you know, a flap going across that can buckle. And then, like I said, here you can see the joint is a little bit open, so if I have something like this circle, I can stick it in there, and I don't actually even need to glue it. It'll pretty much hold in there, but I'm going to glue in my pieces. So that is the base for you. And if you can see through the back, you can see some of the pencil lines, and so you might want to go back and erase those before you glue it together. All the lines that you might be able to see when your card is standing open. I forgot to do that step, so I'm telling you now, before you glue it together, you might want to go back and erase those so that they don't show. And that's it for the platform.